This conference will now be recorded.
All right, welcome everyone to the Harwich Cultural Council meeting for Thursday, June 10th. I'm calling the meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. And pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A, Section 20, and the Governor's March 15th order, 2020, imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Harwich Cultural Council is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Yay. Hopefully that's the last time any of us will have to read that, but we'll talk about that later in the agenda. So I'm going to call the meeting to order with a roll call, and I'll just say your name. If you can state your name and present, that will be great. Sharon, we'll start with you.
Sharon Moore, present.
Thank you. Dinah?
Dinah Lane, present.
Thank you. Charlie?
Charlie Barnes, present.
Thank you. Bernadette?
Bernadette Waystack, present.
Thank you. Chris?
Chris Banks, present.
Thank you. And Tina Games, present. And Peter is not with us this evening. He is celebrating his anniversary. So that's wonderful. Congratulations, Peter, if you are watching the recording later. All right, so announcements. Anybody from the council have an announcement? Anything you want to share? Bernadette, do you want to share maybe just on the senior arts night at the high school?
Sure. Yeah, we had it outside. That was why I wasn't here at the last meeting. We had it outside at the back of the school, and it was a beautiful night. It got a little chilly as the sun went down, but it was a great, another little step back towards normal. For anyone that isn't familiar, what we historically had always done was Bill Lutz would open his gallery to the students and clear out his work for a weekend. And so we'd go down there during the week and have the whole gallery set up with the seniors' work. And then performing artists, some of whom who are both, would perform down at Pilgrim Congregationalist Church. They've always let us use their sanctuary, which has phenomenal acoustics. So it was a whole evening of gathering at a real gallery and seeing the students work, and then everyone would walk down the street and hear the music and then come back to the gallery for cake. And but we had to look at not what we used to do that we couldn't quite do yet. We tried to investigate that, but the Board of Health couldn't help it. They still had too much going on to be able to allow it. So we had it at home on the back campus, and it was different, but as I kept saying, everyone, think about it's not virtual. It's not what last year was, which everything last year was just throw it up on a screen, and it kind of started to lose its individual specialness because everything was remote only. So it was really lovely, and school committee was meeting, so Tina was there right before she went in, and hopefully the music enhanced your meeting, but the kids were so happy. And that's what made us happy. And hopefully it'll come back out to the public in another year's time.
Yeah, thank you, Bernadette. It was a lovely space, actually. I was looking, well, I went out there, of course, and said hello to you and a few others. And then as the school committee was happening, I kept looking out. And as it got darker, because there were beautiful lights, I want to call them fairy lights. And I kept looking out thinking, God, what a beautiful garden out there, because with the fairy lights and I thought it was just lovely. So you did a really, really good job considering the circumstances.
Yeah, a lot of that goes to my colleague Amanda Sherman, who's the department head and who's also head of Spirit, and so she's got all that stuff. And yeah, it was lovely, and the weather cooperated.
Yes,
so that was great. Yeah,
it was a beautiful night. Thank you, Bernadette. Anybody else have an announcement or anything you want to share? All right, seeing none, we will move into the approval of May 13th meeting minutes. If I could have a motion to approve, please.
I had sent a correction to Dinah. I don't know if that it's been taken care of. Erica's last.
I did not send out a correction yet, but I will when I
But
Okay,
other than that,
It's a spelling error, right?
okay, okay. So,
other than that, I move to accept the minutes.
okay, so Chris has made a motion to approve the minutes just with the correction of a spelling, somebody's last name. We just need to correct. So thank you. A second?
I'll second it.
Charlie, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll roll call vote to approve the May 13 minutes with the very slight correction, starting with Sharon.
Aye. Yay.
Thank you. Thank you. Dinah?
Aye.
Thank you. Charlie?
Yay.
Bernadette?
Abstain, I wasn't present.
That's right. Yep. Chris?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So that does approve, that does pass. So thank you very much. All right, so old business. We're going to start with the status of 2020 grant recipients. Chris and I will kind of share these updates, but I will share, kicking this off, we are almost done. We only have 2 more recipients, and we have spoken to both. And it is my understanding via email and conversations that both will be submitting like within the next few days their reimbursements. And as soon as we get that, I think it's Denya Devine or Levine. And then, yeah, thank you. And Davis Bates. So as soon as we get those 2 in, we are done. And we can close the books on 2020. Chris, did you have anything to add for 2020?
No,
Okay.
I've
So
been in
just
the
those
mailbox.
2.
There's nothing there, so.
Okay. And I will stay on top of that because we definitely need to get it in, get it processed and over to Carol by June 30th. At the very, like literally, that's the last day she can get that in her hands. So I'll just stay on top of that. Dinah?
Could we review which ones actually have relinquished their money so that we have how much we ended up?
Actually, and well, and let me say this, Dinah, I'm happy to give you that information, but I'm going to remind everybody that, and this is something I've mentioned a couple of times and Chris and I've talked about, the monies overlap. So I don't want us to get confused with things, because the way that the monies hit, like the town money comes in July, and this year it didn't come in until October. And then we finally, which we'll report on here in a bit, finally got the state money.
Yes.
So so the balances, so we can certainly talk about, and I've got that list up, Chris, unless you've got it handy, about who canceled.
You can go ahead. Speak.
All right, so let me hold on one second. Let me just hop over real quickly and see if I can pull it up. So we can just go down real quickly. I just want to be really careful though that we're not taking the amount and looking at the balance, because we have already started paying our 2021 grant recipients. So if we had 2 separate accounts for 2020, 2021, then we could certainly have a good comparison. But because everything's merged into one, we've already started paying the 2021 folks. All right, so let me see here. I'm gonna pull it up real quickly. 2020. Let me just get it up on my screen so I can take a quick peek. All right, so for canceled, I'm just gonna run down this list. And do you want the name, Dinah, what, are you just looking to list the names of the grant
I was just
recipients?
wondering how much money actually ended up coming back to them.
Okay.
Not
So
that we were counting on it or that we still have it. I just wanted to know how much it was. I thought that would be useful.
Sure. Yeah, sure. All right. So the first one is Movie Mento, and that one was $300, so that canceled. The second one is the Soul Collage Group that canceled for $250. The next one was the Brain Injured Artist who canceled. Hers was $500. The next one is the Puppet Theater Presentations who canceled, and that one was $400. And just let me know if I need to slow this down at all. Then we have the Teen Artist Coalition, and that canceled. That one was $450. Then we had the field trip, Cuddy Hunk field trip. That one was $950. That was actually a very early cancel. That one came almost immediately, a whole year ago, over a year ago. Whenever that first thing hit, that one was our very first cancel.
Did you say it was 950?
Yes. And then we had May the Forces Be With You. That one canceled, and that one was $290. And then the last one was Best Buddies, and that one canceled at $500. All right, so let me close that out so I can go back and see everybody. All right, any questions about that?
So that is just unexpected money that we did not expect to have to be able to spend whenever it is we are spending it. That was all.
Yep. Yes, yep. And it should be, and it will float into the, certainly it's floating in the main account. And
Right.
it also, we've already been dipping in a little bit because we didn't have that $5,000 in our
Right.
account either.
Right.
And we have been paying our 2021 grant recipients. So, yeah, right. Yep. All right, so any questions for 2020? And now we'll move into 2021. And Chris, I think you have the most current list.
Yes. So, okay, so Beyond the Bounds for 500. The Alzheimer's Family Arts and Ideas Alzheimer's Family Support Center for 400. Rise and Shine, the Cultural Center of Cape Cod, 615. Eventide Theater Company, 300. And the Cape Cod Orchestra, 500. That's it.
Cape Cod Orchestra was 500, did you say? I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay. So those are ones that have been paid out.
right.
Okay.
Yes. All righty. Any other questions? Any questions? 2021, anybody? So 2021, I think we had 16 grant recipients, and it sounds like 5. So we should have about 11 more coming in for 2021, and then our remaining 2 for 2020. And just depends on how they all hit up, because the 2021 folks technically have until the end of February next year to submit, just because we got a late start.
Right.
So I expect and hope that probably there'll be a little bit of an overlap in 2022 with those 2 months. But I'm hoping that next year, I was asking Ricky about this, and we're hoping to get everybody back on track at some point, where we can get back to the real year that we're actually dealing with. So
That would be great.
yeah, it really would. All right, so no questions on that. We're going to move into the allocation, the Mass Cultural Council allocation. It is finally in our account, right, Chris? I think that came in, I think I got a notification.
It is in our account. However, the statement that she sent me, it doesn't reflect. It's going to reflect in the June.
Okay, all right, okay. So I do know that it got there. Some of you, maybe not all of you, something happened, something kind of wacky happened, and the contract, I guess, this is kind of interesting. I was not aware that there was an annual contract that had to be signed. I guess it just happened. And so the fact that it didn't happen this year, it kind of came to our attention because it went to Chris Clark, and I guess it got lost somewhere in cyberspace. So now I know, for all of you going forward, there is an annual agreement that the Mass Cultural Council and the town of Harwich sign off on. And it's basically an agreement that the town of Harwich is receiving X amount of dollars to be put into the Cultural Council account to be used for grant funding. It is an annual agreement. I now know that. I never
Signed-
actually had any
signed-
idea that was happening. Yep.
Signed by who?
It will, according to this year, and this may change from administrator to administrator, but I believe in a little bit of my digging, I think Chris Clark might have signed off on it, because unless I can go back to old videotapes and to see if it ever went in front of the Board of Selectmen, I don't recall it, but I'm not saying it didn't happen. Dinah.
Okay, so that was what happened as far as you understand in the past. However, for this one, Chris Clark is no longer around. And
Yep.
what I remember, the last bounce that I remember was that Joe Powers said that he had to meet with the selectmen in order to have them approve it before it could be signed. So
Yes.
you know exactly
Yep.
what the steps were this time.
So based on my understanding, again, from administrator to administrator, it appears Joe Powers wants, I think at some point back when Chris Clark was in, I think there was a $50,000 threshold, I think, that anything under 50,000, the town administrator could sign. That has changed, if I'm understanding correctly. I think everything now has to go in front of the Board of Selectmen. So, that's Joe wanted to put it in front of the Board of Selectmen, and that's fine. That's his prerogative. Maybe the rules changed, but that would be my guidance going forward. It shouldn't have to be, and this is something I talked to Ricky about. I've never had to get involved in this ever. It just happened. So I'm hoping after I talk to Megan Eldridge, yeah, I think it's her last name. She actually took this over from Joe, took it off his plate and just followed it through to make sure it got signed by the Board of Selectmen. So it's my understanding.
Signed by the Board of Selectmen, not just approved and then signed by the town manager.
Yeah, the chairperson. Yeah, and I'm learning this too, Dinah. So it appears that going forward, that is the preference by this particular Board of Selectmen, this board, and Joe Powers. It appears to me that the process going forward is that the Board of Selectmen, the chairperson, it goes in front of the Board of Selectmen, they agree to it, and then the chair signs off on it, and then Megan or Joe pick it up and get it over to the Mass Cultural Council, the financial officer, and once the financial officer gets it, then they do their processing, and then the check goes out. I learned all that this year.
Just in
Well,
time
that's
to
great.
Yes. It was, yes, I was on the phone with Ricky a couple days ago, and it was like, you know, I just never had to get involved ever before, but that's, it's just something that happened this year.
Right. Well, it's great that you tracked it down, and I certainly appreciate all your hard work on that. What I'm thinking about is trying to avoid having any such hiccups next year. And so just trying to think, is it now straightened out? Do they know how to do it? Do we know how it's going to work? I guess that's really the question. And who should be responsible for following up early before it becomes a problem, potentially? That's really, I guess, my question.
So, all right, so let's back up a little bit. The state of Mass Cultural Council, this is a rule that's never changed. Once the annual report is done, the back end of the annual report, for those of you that have been in the portal and you've seen the Mass Cultural Council report, once that hits submit and everything is in there, that triggers the Mass Cultural Council that the funding is ready to take place. I now know that a contract is involved. It was my understanding before this year that all that was needed was the annual report coming in, and then the check came to Harwich. Now I know that there's a contract involved. So the contract, so I would say it's really, I don't know, you guys can decide yourself whether it's the chair and the treasurer working together. I hope that you don't have to chase it down, but you might want to be on alert, whatever the deadline is for the annual report next year, which typically it's mid-January, I think, on a normal year. So about mid-January should be when that money would hit once the annual report goes in. So I don't know what to say other than, Chris, you could just keep an eye on the balance, you know, the statement, and you know, you should be able to see or you know, when the money's hitting. And if it's not hitting, then, you know, you can get involved in seeing what's happening. Does that answer, Dinah, hopefully your question?
Yeah, I was asking really for all of us.
Yeah.
Just so we have it straight.
Yeah, it was a new experience. I'll be honest. It just was. And in fact, I reached out to the old treasurer just to ask her if she had ever got involved because I was curious. She said she had never had to get involved. So I guess it was just something that was happening. And but they have a different process now. The town does. Yeah.
As long as they know what the process is. And that we
Exactly. Well, and that's Megan and I did kind of go back and forth a little bit with emails, and I copied Ricky's, and Carol Coppola was involved in the. So I think everybody is now understanding, but it's not to say it won't happen again. I hope it won't. Hopefully somebody somewhere has documented the process, and we should be okay. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Right.
That's what I'd like to document what I understand of the process, just for our records. That's why I was asking.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Where is this document that has to be signed? Is it part of the back door on the annual report?
I've never seen it. Yeah. I've never seen it. It has never traveled through a channel of the Cultural Council, nor should it. It goes directly from the financial officer of the Mass Cultural Council to whoever the contact is, which would be the town administrator. So it goes from the financial officer of MCC to the town administrator's office. So the Harwich Cultural Council will never see the contract.
Oh, okay.
We are not required to sign off on it. We're not required to vote on it. It's an agreement between the town and the state.
Okay.
Yep. The only reason I saw it this year is because we were trying to hunt it down, and I'm like, what does it look like? So I got a copy of it from the fiscal officer from Mass Cultural Council, sent it to me, so I knew what I could show Megan that we were missing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But I do have a copy of this year's. I'm happy to pass that along. Chris, I can pass that along to you just for your records, but you should never, ever have to get involved in it.
Good.
Yeah.
No.
All right. Yeah, all righty. Any other questions about that? And let me make a note of that too, Chris. So I'll send you a copy, because yeah, the copy actually had to be cleaned up too, because it still had Chris Clark. I mean, there was a whole back and forth about trying to correct it and have the right names on it. Because the town refused to sign
Might not have happened without your involvement, so that's why it's actually
Right. Yeah, and go ahead, Chris.
That was Dinah.
Oh, Dinah, I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm just making a note, Chris, so I can send it to you. I'll just send you the copy that I got my hands on this year.
Okay.
Okay. So you'll have it for your records, but just know that you are never going to have to get involved unless there's a tangle somewhere.
Unless you don't get the money deposited, then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
We're not really, it's kind of weird because the agreement really is between the town and the state, because they're giving the town money for us to use. So we're not the ones that, are the processors of the check.
Yeah, we don't handle the money. Actually,
Yeah.
we just.
We just give it out.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, we never touch the money. We never really ever touch the money. We're just processing where it goes.
We're a conduit.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Next item is the recruitment, and we do have some exciting news to share.
Bernadette had her hand up.
Oh, Bernadette, I apologize. Go ahead.
It's okay. Thank you, Dinah. It was just the thought occurred to me that if it's possible that contract could become an agenda item if we watch selectmen's meetings near the end of the calendar year, if Chris wasn't seeing it come in and we thought there was a screw up again, if it's something they have to approve, it might be an agenda item on one of their weekly agendas to approve it, to send it back to Joe. So that's another way to kind of keep an eye on it. But
yeah, that's
a glitch that'll square up now.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. It's a very good suggestion. And I think the other thing, because there were so many new players this year with Joe and Megan, I think it's my personal thought is, I think the chair at least should have been notified that it was coming up on an agenda. I mean, the only reason I knew about it is because I was the one chasing it down. If it has ever been on an agenda, I've never been notified.
Right. I think that Joe has a a better, more organized way of doing things, and Megan and he together, hopefully they're getting the things squared away in a way that it won't be a problem again.
As long as they're there, that'll be great.
Yes. Yes, and I think one of the things I learned also, I mean, just as a sidebar, is I think for a while there was a $50,000 threshold that the town administrator had that he could sign contracts without board approval. That has been changed.
Mhm.
So that's kind of, I think, part of the tangle as well. Yeah. All right, going into recruitment. So we do have some exciting news. Yay. So we had 2 candidates who were interviewed yesterday, Nina being one of them, and Jackie Leach was the other one. It is my understanding that both, I believe both, they liked both, it worked out. It's my understanding it will go on an agenda. I don't know if it's, I was going to take a look at the Board of Selectmen agenda to see if they're on the agenda for Monday or if it's going to be the next Monday. But what will happen is it'll move to the Board of Selectmen, and under, I think, the consent agenda, I believe, it will say appointments, and it will have the Harwich Cultural Council and the 2 names that they're appointing. So that might happen on Monday, and it might happen the next Monday. I haven't had a chance to look at the agenda to see how quickly they moved on that. But that is very good news, and they should be appointed before the end of June and should be able to be sworn in and ready to go July 1. So that will be lovely, and it will give you 7 members. So that's
Well, we'll
good news.
also have Sue Richer, right? She's teaching, and so she felt that she was trying to wrap up the end of her year, and she will then get involved in processing and selectmen and all that kind of stuff very soon. So we're
Terrific.
pretty well guaranteed with her as well.
Okay, terrific. Oh, the other thing too, I guess I can say this, gosh, wraps around many things. I had a very long conversation with Don Howell on Saturday to talk about some concerns I was having with recruitment. And so they, it appears, based on what Don had shared with me, so a lot of things are, I guess, being put into order because there's been a lot of change in the town administrator's office. Danielle Delaney is going to be the new town administrator's administrative assistant, I think it's her title. So it's no longer going to be Patty. For those of you that knew Patty, Patty's moving into another role. So Danielle will be the person I think you'll be working with in the town administrator's office. And that could always change again, but for right now, it's Danielle Delaney. And she should be sending, as soon as the Nina and Jackie are appointed, there's an email that will come from Danielle that will let me know through the end of June, and I'll kind of clue everybody in, that says they've been appointed, and there'll be an attachment of the appointment letter. And then that will trigger me before the end of June to send them a nice welcome email with an orientation like all of you got when you joined from me. You got a welcome, kind of a little bit of links to training. So I'm going to send those out to both Nina and Jackie once that process has been done. It'll have the link to the open meeting law training, the Mass Cultural Council training, conflict of interest training. So they'll get a nice welcome email with all of the links and things that they're required to do before getting sworn in.
Good.
So I will take care of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Any questions?
No.
All righty. Let's move into new business. All righty. 2021 grant reception planning subcommittee. I put this on the agenda because it's my understanding that next week on the 15th, whenever that falls, I think it's Monday, the town buildings are opening up. So I'm assuming that means the cultural center. So you can be thinking about whether or not you want to go ahead. And I have not reached out to Erica yet because I just wanted to have this meeting tonight and we'll talk in a little bit about meeting schedules and that sort of thing. But whether or not you wanted to think about a grant reception, if you wanted to form a planning subcommittee today, whatever this is, 4:30, we can do that. And I am happy, and I'm going to offer myself, I'm technically still a member through the end of June, and I'm happy in a citizen role beyond June to be a part of your planning committee and kind of help you get that grant reception off the ground. And I'm hoping it can be in person. So I'm happy to volunteer myself in that way. So I don't know if you want, since I'm throwing my name into the ring, if somebody else would want to join me to kind of learn a little bit about how to put that together. It's pretty simple. And then that way that person can take it on maybe years following.
Mhm.
So does anybody want to join me?
I will do that.
Oh, good.
Oh. Okay, so Dinah will? Okay, good. And Sharon, I don't want to put you on the spot, but something that I thought about as grant coordinator, it might be helpful. I don't want to arm twist you into it, but it might be helpful just to be a part of the planning committee, but I'm not gonna, I don't want to arm twist you into it. So, okay, thank you. All right, so let's have the planning subcommittee be Dinah, Sharon, and me.
Okay.
Yep. And then we'll kind of work on that. And I guess in September, when you meet again, hopefully with the planning subcommittee, because we probably want to get together, the three of us, and just talk about if we want to do it in person. I mean, I don't know, maybe we'll just take a couple minutes here to talk openly. Would the goal be to have it in person if you could?
Yes,
I would say so.
Okay.
I would say so.
Okay, so because a suggestion I had, the next grant cycle is not really going to be getting into high gear until November, because you'll have a November, December meeting. So my suggestion would be, and the planning subcommittee can check the dates, to pick a date in October. Unless you want to, or you could probably, my suggestion, but it's really your decision, of course, you could take your October meeting and make it a grant reception. You could certainly open it up and do a half-hour business if you wanted to, and then roll it into a grant reception.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So
You
that
don't
would be the,
The 14th.
The other things that we will need to be addressing at that time.
and what will some other things be?
Well, we're getting ready for the new grant cycle. The whole October 15th is the due date. Is that
Yep.
right? Or yeah.
Yeah, it'll be that first Monday, whatever that is, right around what is now being called Columbus Day.
The
Mhm.
4th,
It'll be
the
right around
first
that date.
Monday.
Or is it, or the second? I apologize. Yeah, I think it's around the 15th. That's right. Yeah.
And we'll
That's
be incorporating at least 2 new members, possibly 3, we hope. I don't know. I'm just thinking there might be enough time in that September meeting to get everybody all oriented and, ready to go. And I'm hoping that perhaps one of the new members at least would be interested in also being on the planning subcommittee. I think that might be great. We could use a few people, particularly if it's going to be in person. And Tina, with you not officially on the council, we don't want you to be overburdened by having to do too much. So I'm just thinking we might want to get some more involvement. And I like the idea of sparing a meeting, but I'll also have in mind, if I could just bring this up, about the preparation meeting for grant applicants, and when we might be holding that. Because that has sometimes been held in August, hasn't it, sometimes? And, and that's a whole separate meeting. And, if we're talking about not meeting again until the fall, clearly that's another thing that has to be planned. There's a
So
lot
if I,
going on.
okay, go ahead, Donna.
Not that I want more meetings, mind you. I'm just thinking about how we're going to get it all done.
So if I can make a recommendation, the grant informational session, which is what Dinah's talking about, that was something new that we did, I guess 3 years ago, because we didn't do it this past year. 3 years ago, that the council at that time decided it would be good to offer an informational session. And we picked a day in August and made it kind of a bring your own lunch. Everybody brought their lunch. at both of those, we got about 12 people. Here's my thought, and I guess because it's technically not a meeting, and I'm wondering via Zoom or something else if we could do a virtual version, because I'm wondering if the turnout would be a little better if people didn't have to pack up and go to the cultural center. Because a lot of what we do in that session, we have to use a computer, and it's easier, I think, to actually get in a Zoom room and share your screen than it is to figure out how to put that video up on the library wall. Dinah?
So do you have the sense that because it is not officially a town meeting, town sanctioned meeting or run meeting, that we could in fact use Zoom instead of go to meeting?
I'm going to say yes, because when we did the grant informational session last 2 times, it wasn't an official meeting. We did not have a quorum there. It was me taking responsibility of educating people.
Yeah.
And we put it on the calendars and everything, but it wasn't an official meeting. So we didn't call a meeting to order. There wasn't a quorum there. It was basically me standing in front of a room talking to people about the grant program. I think there might have been one other grant council person there just to observe, but it wasn't an official meeting. It was just us offering a service to people. And so so in my mind, we should be able to do it again. I mean, we could certainly use the GoToMeeting platform. We all know the tricky part about sharing a screen, though. That's been a problem. So I would just say Zoom would be easier.
But if it's not required, we might prefer to use Zoom. I'm just asking really.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation. Yeah. Yeah. And basically what I've done in the past, I mean, there's several videos and all kinds of things that the state has produced. I've just pulled together a bunch of slides and just walked people through an application. Is kind of where I put it up on the screen. We go to every little page. I talk it through. I take questions, and it's easier for people visually to see what I'm talking about. Yep. So if you choose to do that, you'll probably, I guess you'll really want to talk about it right now, because they're not going to meet again until September.
Right.
Unless you want to delegate it to someone to take the responsibility, and then the council just gives that responsibility to someone.
I can just plan to do that.
Okay.
Particularly because when I look at August, I know I'll be going away near the end of it. So if, rather than somebody else is trying to do it and saying, oh, I can't come at that time, but sounds like I could just put it together and put it on a Google Meet or a Zoom, and then, I'll pick your brain about the slides.
Yep, and I'm happy, Bernadette, if the date works, I am very happy to join you. I won't be a member, so there won't be a, member thing going on, but I'm happy to join you and to co-share it or whatever. Yeah.
That'd be great. It's after the middle of the month, actually. I won't be gone away until like the 20th, but I just didn't know if other people had other plans and would have come up with another date. So anytime up through mid-August, we could pick a date that seemed like a good time for it.
Thanks, Bernadette.
Okay. So would you want to pick a date, or does the council feel that since Bernadette has offered to take this on, I'm very happy to support her. Do you want to just leave it up to Bernadette and me to pick a date and inform you as to when that will be?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that okay?
That sounds good.
So why don't we do that for the minutes, and Bernadette and I'll work on that, and then we'll get to work on advertising and marketing it and sharing it with everybody. And because it's not an official meeting, it's just a public service.
And I think we had picked, like we had talked about October being a good time to do that kind of reception, because after the grants come in, then we're going to be busy.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a window. It's certainly a window.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, and it's kind of a nice way, I think, to put some closure a little bit on 2021 before you start taking a deep dive into 2022.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation. But the planning committee, we could kind of come together and nail that down, and then we can just inform the council. Because I think open meeting law allows you to email if it's about setting a date or agreeing to date. Open meeting law says you can do that by email. So you don't have to get together and call a meeting to set a date. So we can take care of that via email, and the planning committee can kind of look into the dates with Erica over at the Cultural Center and kind of come up with what our plan is, and then we can email everybody the date and time and get your feedback on it, because we can do that.
Yep. So there are two meetings we're talking about, right? I mean, yes. One of them is the informational meeting, which you and Bernadette are going to work on, and the other, which is in August, and the other is the reception.
Exactly.
Which you and Sharon and I are going to work on.
Right.
So Tina, you're really not going anywhere.
Not yet. I'll hang out a little bit.
Keeping her on a short leash.
As I told Don, I've been very invested in this council for 6 years, and I made it real clear to Don, I didn't want to see it dropping through the cracks. So I'm
sure
happy.
that was compelling. Yeah. That was a compelling argument for him.
Yeah. So I will see it through and help and just get us through this 2021 year. And then I think once everybody kind of gets the lay of the land, I think it'll be easier, to settle in. So just a couple of reminders. So with the reception, that will be a public meeting, because I would expect a quorum to be there. So it will be a meeting we'll have to announce and make sure it's on the calendar. That's why I recommended that it could just be your October meeting.
Yes.
If it's not your October meeting, you'll have to post an additional meeting, of which we'll have to have an agenda. So I would just recommend that it be your meeting. And you can
then
open it
not actually have other business, just have reception as the business. Is that what you're saying? That is the, okay.
Yeah, and you can always open the meeting, approve minutes, whatever, make a few announcements, and then you're going to roll into your grant reception. And then at the end of it, you just kind of adjourn it like you would a regular meeting. But this is stuff I'll
okay.
Support.
We'll talk about
I'll support that process.
Okay.
And then the other one, again, it's a public service. So it's not a meeting. It's a public service offered by the Harwich Cultural Council.
Like a seminar.
Right, it's a seminar. Exactly. Thank you, Bernadette. Yep. All right. So that takes care of that, I think, unless anybody has any questions. And then Sharon, Dinah, and I will connect, and then Bernadette and I will connect on our different things. All righty. So moving into the Cultural Council priorities, in your packets, there is a list. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at those. This is something that we're required to do if everybody kind of has it in front of you. We're required to update, change if we should. These have to be posted, and they're always on our town webpage. There is a tab that says council priorities, and then there's also, if you go to the state page and go to the Harwich page on the state page, there's also a tab that says council priorities. So we have to have these updated, and this is for grant recipients or applicants. If they want to apply for a grant, this kind of gives them what our priorities are. So this has not been changed probably for the last couple of years. I think we might have made a change maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but this has been pretty consistent. But I wanted everybody to look at it. If there was anything you wanted to take off or change or whatever, I'll just kind of open the floor up for any discussion or questions. And I'll tell you real quickly, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was a council priority at one time that said we couldn't fund field trips. And then we changed that a couple of years ago because the council at the time felt that that was a cultural activity. And why were we denying field trips? So we made that change. So just take a look at that. And if anybody wants to make a motion to approve as is, or if there is anything you want to add or delete.
I make a motion to approve as is.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Could I have a second?
I second it.
All right, Dinah seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none. So this is approving the council priorities as is. And we're going to start with Sharon.
Aye.
Thank you. Dinah?
Aye.
Thank you. Charlie? Thank you. Bernadette?
Aye.
Thank you. Chris?
Aye.
All right, thank you. And I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. And that is less work for me. Yeah, I don't have to go in and update anything. Because should you, going forward, should you ever change this, then the chair or the grant, whatever you decide, I can't remember. I think I've got it, I think I assigned it to the chair. Yeah, so the chair would have to go in and make any edits. So you'd have to go to the town page, of which you would have to be really clear and send that over to usually Caleb, for those of you that know Caleb, because somebody has to make the changes on the website on the town. And then the state, you actually have access to go in and change it yourself. So someone would have to go in and edit if you ever made changes. Okay.
Yeah, could I just get a clarification? I looked at this a while ago when you sent it, and I didn't make note of exactly where I saw it, but it appeared to me that somewhere in the instructions about what we were to do, what the council's responsibilities are with regard to those priorities, is that they have to be updated every year.
That's true.
But
Yep.
then there has to be a community input meeting every 3 years. Is that
Yes,
right?
that
But
is correct.
You had told me that it was every 3 years, but I think I read somewhere in the MCC information that you have to have a community meeting every year. And so
No.
I didn't know. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And thank you, Dinah, for the question. And I probably, and I didn't put it on the agenda. It could certainly be considered other items though, because you could certainly tie it into the cultural priorities conversation. But what Dinah's talking about is every 3 years, the Mass Cultural Council does require every cultural council to do community input. And it's basically just making sure we're doing our jobs. You know, it's asking the community, do you like the grant program? Is there anything we should be doing differently? The council, how can we be a better service? That's, you know, to get some input. And it's really more for the council to decide based on that input if you ever wanted to make any changes to your council priorities. Like if somebody said, let me just see what a hypothetical might be. Let's see here. Like if, let's just say that somebody decided, I've looked at your grant list every year and I noticed 75% is all to the school. So why not these people? You know, so somebody could make those types of comments. And if that was true, then the council could say, gosh, are we giving too much to the schools? Should we have a conversation? Should we maybe do 50% to the schools or 25%? So it's designed to kind of reach out to the community to ask them, you know, what are their thoughts? And if you go to the town webpage, and I'm actually a little nervous about sharing my screen, Sharon, only because I'm the host, but Sharon, if you could try on the Town of Harwich, Cultural Council Town of Harwich webpage, there is a link to the last survey because I never took it down, even though I just kind of left it there because I thought, you know, what did it hurt if anybody went in and added something? I would get notified. But if you pull it up, we can take a quick look at what some of the questions were that the council created 3 years ago, because you can decide how you want to get the input. You can create a survey. You could hold a special meeting. You could, or a listening session. If you go to the Town of Harwich,
Yep, I'm there.
okay, and over to the left, there should be some tabs.
Yep.
And do you see a community survey link?
An assessment?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you open that up, it's a Survey Monkey that I created actually based on the questions that the council came up with 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And if you could try to get it up on the screen, we'll take a quick peek at it. But community input, and oh good, looks like Sharon's gonna try to present. But this is strictly for you. I found out that the Mass Cultural Council does not need to see this. Nobody really needs to see it.
Right,
It's just really for the council.
Yeah.
So if you want to start, if you want to scroll, I don't know if you can make your screen any bigger or is that on my end? I don't know if I have the
Yeah,
capacity.
mine is so tiny, I can't read it.
Let me
Mine's
just try.
okay.
Is this helping? Does that help?
No.
Or is that just me? I
I
just
can
made it
see it
big.
pretty well. I'm on a Mac. I don't know if that makes the difference.
So I don't
Right.
know if everybody, if you go, I thought this was me, but maybe it's just for me. If you go over to the right, let me see where this button
Oh, I
was.
see.
There
Plus.
is,
Yeah, I got it.
there's a
Yeah.
plus and a minus. If you do a
Yeah, I
plus several times,
Okay, and now scrolling down, I can't
and
seem to
Sharon, if
scroll.
you can scroll down because you've got the controls of the scrolling.
Okay,
Let's just go we'll just go very slowly if you don't mind, Sharon. So these are the questions that 3 years ago the council came up with. Are you
Mhm.
familiar with the Cultural Council? So, I mean, we found out that probably 60% knew what the council was and what we did, and maybe 40 didn't. So that was
Yeah.
kind of something we had to sit and talk about. Go ahead.
How did you distribute this?
I printed, because I did it through Survey Monkey, and I've actually got a hard copy. Because I was working on a free account with Survey Monkey, it did not allow me to download it, unfortunately. Well, it allowed me to download it. It didn't allow me to send it, like to make the presentation. I had to print it out. So I couldn't it was kind of, but I do have a hard copy of this in an old file, the results, and it created pie charts for me, created kind of like charts as to how people voted on this. But I do have this information. Go ahead, Sharon, go down to the next one. But you as a council, and this is going to come up, you are due, Harwich Cultural Council is due for another grant assessment this spring, 2022. Next spring, I'm sorry, next
I
spring.
think you had said March, something like that. Right?
Yeah, March. March is when we did it last year. Actually, February is when we put the questions together. March is when we did the survey, put it out, and then April, during our April meeting, is when we sat and looked at the results and talked about them amongst ourselves.
You mean 3 years ago?
Yep, in 2019.
Yeah.
So you're going to be due again in the spring of 2022. And the reason I said March is just because that's when we did it last time, but it will be sometime you get to decide in spring of 2022. And you can get the information, again, however you want. You're not locked into a survey unless you decide you want to do the survey. And Sharon, you're so good at the Google Forms. If you do a survey, you could probably do Google Forms and you don't have to do Survey Monkey. Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah,
the
we'll just
question distribution list, how we get a distribution list so that we get real feedback from lots of people.
Yep, what we did is I made a couple of announcements at Board of Selectmen meetings and public comment that year. I also sent a press release to the Chronicle. I think Channel 18, I can't remember actually I did. I went on and was interviewed, but Dinah, this was before you came on. I was interviewed by that lovely man, I can't remember his name, on Channel 18, and I talked about the assessment. And I think we might have had a link or something at the bottom of my interview. So
that could be done again for sure.
Yes. And then Erica sent it out to her list at the Cultural Center. And then I think Cindy, I think I might have asked Cindy Williams. We were just reaching out to everybody we knew who could get the list out.
Yeah, we could do it through social media with Harwich Old Timers and I Love Harwich and the various town.
Yep. And we did. Yep.
Which
In
didn't
fact,
exist probably then.
Yeah, I think I might have done that, Bernadette. Now that I think about it, I know I did it on I Love Harwich, and I can't remember if I did the Old Timers or not. I think I might have actually. If I go back in and look at some of my old Facebook posts, I might have added it. It might be on the Facebook page. Yeah, I'll take a
But
look.
I had the same question. I was about to ask the same question that Dinah did about, well, who do you give it to? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know I can get it to the schools, but then
Right.
again, that, you
It
don't
might
want it
be
to close
huge.
group.
And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, best of my memory, without going up and upstairs and grabbing the old report, I think we had 78, I want to say, responses. So it wasn't horribly high. We were
No,
trying
but
to,
that's not terrible either. That's actually,
Right.
I think that's a pretty good return.
And you did your due diligence, and that's the,
Right. yeah.
And did you have a sense of what the constituents were, who the constituents were, the demographics of the people that were responding?
Actually, I have to look again if we collected that information. I can't recall. Sharon, you've got it up in front of you. Want to scroll down? I don't know that we asked a demographic. I think we talked about that, but I think there was some consensus among the council that wasn't a fair
I went
question
off
to
it.
ask.
I went
Yeah,
out of it, but yes, it
Okay.
did. It asked about age grouping.
Mhm.
Was that for the person filling out the form, or was that for the group of like people we should be servicing through our grant program?
Let me see.
And I can pull it up on my phone,
It
actually.
would be good, whether it has it on there or not. I don't know what the downside would be to asking about,
We
general.
had, yeah, I won't go into all the specifics, but we did have a very strong voice at the council at that time who really thought it was an invasion of privacy, that did not want us asking those types of questions. They just wanted people to respond. And we did get,
No, it didn't. It just said, is there a particular population segment we should be serving?
right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
they didn't want data. I mean, that's just, that data is informative of like,
Yeah.
where are you getting your information from,
Exactly. It is.
Right. And that is a council decision. That is absolutely your decision. All I'm just going to say is 3 years ago, we had a very, very strong voice on the council that really felt it was an invasion of privacy. And we all just said, okay, fine. So we just went with the questions that you're seeing in front of you. It just depends on the council makeup at the time and what the majority is and what you all decide is important. So if you think that's important information, then yeah, you can include it. Yeah.
Okay. It's also optional. Nobody asked for any question, in fact. So it seems to me
Yep.
that's something we can
Yep.
talk about.
Yeah. So anyway, but that was kind of the history there. But yes, you'll be due for that. And I can't remember if I added that to the timeline. I think I might have added it. We'll talk about that in a second. I think it might. Yeah, I can't remember if I added it in there. I'll take a look in just a sec. Any other questions though about council priorities before we move into the timeline?
Yeah, and you do have that in the timeline for March.
Okay, perfect. Because I knew it was coming up, so I wanted to add it into the timeline. All right, so let's go ahead and move into the timeline. And what I did with the timeline is because Donna and I had a couple of conversations, and she had suggested that it would be really helpful to kind of see, a big picture of what all was going on with everybody's jobs. So I went through the timeline. I actually pulled the state's timeline, and then I plugged in the local pieces in there as well. And then I put this together and kind of went through in my head every month, what was everybody doing, the whole council. So what you have in front of you, and yes, you are correct. I think I stuck it in February about the, because I knew that was coming up for you in 2022.
March.
Yeah. Yes. And then typically what we did last time in 2019, because it was I can't remember. Yeah, I think I maybe have done 2 community input. Yeah, actually I have done 2 community input since I've been on the council. So, and what we tended to do is we had one meeting where we talked about the questions, what kind of information felt important. And then we had a conversation and agreed on it. And then somebody took the responsibility of putting it into form. Both times we did surveys, and then we agreed that we would run the survey for 30 days and publicize it. And then the next meeting, so it kind of went over 3 meetings. And then the third meeting, we got the results and sat down and talked about them and how would we use the results.
Right.
Yeah. but you're
Yeah,
not locked
that was
into a
all
survey.
very clearly outlined. Yeah, it's great.
Yep. You can always do a listening session, whatever you feel is best. I mean, you get to decide. And I also discovered after getting that beautiful report from SurveyMonkey and printing it out, it wasn't Ricky at the time, it was somebody else, Charlotte Cutter, I think. I said, okay, where do I send this? And the Mass Cultural Council said, oh, we don't need a copy of it. That's just for you. I'm like, oh, okay. You get to use it to decide, if you need to change anything or you want to adjust anything in your cultural priorities or the way that you're awarding grants. It's really just for you. So it's really just for you.
So we don't have to prove even that we did it.
You don't really. I mean, if anybody asked, it's nice that you can show it, but we don't, there's nothing. Well, no, I take this back. On the annual report, there is a little block that says last community input, and you just have to put the date. That is all that you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to put the date that you did it. Nobody asked for it.
Yep.
Yes, Chris?
I think we also talked about getting more recognition for Harwich Cultural Council, because we wanted to know where there was a problem getting our information across, that maybe I had not, before I was asked to be on this group, I had never heard of it. I just wasn't even familiar. So I think there was a lack of publicizing the whole thing. And what did help is when you did the keynote speaking of the grants and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a publicity issue that we were lacking, and probably still are, because even though I asked a few people to be on this group, they have not heard of it. So, we're still having a lack of publicity on it.
So it's interesting, Chris, because I think it's always been an issue. It's always been an issue, because when I first came onto the council in 2015, that was one of the things I brought to the attention of everyone, that nobody really knew about it. The only reason I knew about it is because I'm just an involved person who moved from Washington, D.C., and I got on the town's website to see what committees could I join. And I saw the Cultural Council. I said, oh, that looks interesting. And I put in my application. So it wasn't because I knew anything about it. It was just because I saw it on a list and I thought it would be interesting.
Right.
So I think it's always been an issue. And we made a commitment one of the years, maybe 2018. It was the year that the compact, it was right before the compact came to our attention. We set the goal of visibility. We were going to be that was the year we created the logo. Because we decided if we're going to be visible, we need a logo. And I noticed that all the other cultural councils had a logo, but not us, because we were still using the Mass Cultural Council logo with just at the bottom, the Harwich Cultural Council. Somebody had typed it in. So we decided we needed a logo, and that was part of our plan that year. We just decided we needed to be more visible. And so we were out, we were talking to people. The compact came, and we became very visible that year because we were in the Chronicle quite a bit, or at least I was being interviewed by Bill Galvin. And I was with Cindy quite a bit talking about the district. So we did become very visible in 2018. Yeah. And then
So
it's kind of fallen off again.
Could I just ask a question? Chris, you're referring to this visibility issue with regard to assembling some feedback from people, and that in some way reaching out to do an assessment will be helpful in that regard. Is that why you were raising it?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, and that can be your goals anytime. The timeline that you're looking for is kind of what you're obligated to do. And beyond that, you can take on anything you want. And in 2018, we had agreed at that time that we needed to be more visible. So we kind of added extra little projects for ourselves that year, getting the logo and doing all of these things. So we kind of added that, and you are welcome at any time to add anything beyond what you're looking at on the timeline. These are just your minimums, what you're responsible for.
Well, I think now too, the group that I started out with, when I came in, it was an older group, and they weren't social media minded. And I
Yep.
think now that that's going to put us on the map. Social media is, I mean, that's what all our middle-aged gals and guys and teens and all that. I mean, that's what they're all about. So, yeah,
Yep.
want to work.
Yep. Charlie?
In my experience, when you have a small budget, the best way to get recognition is face-to-face. So planning to be places, I know the chamber has something going on shortly, planning to be places and having spirited conversations about what you do, I think is a great way to get the word across, because otherwise, you can't do a newspaper article. I think the younger people who are really in tune with what you can do on the internet can certainly do our Facebook page, for instance, and try and get the word out that way. But you have to have some way to hook the interested parties. I think face-to-face really is the best way to do it.
Well, now that our COVID thing is done, maybe we can have some business after hours and, network that way.
Yeah,
That's a good way.
You're reminding me, Charlie, because I was on the voter information committee for 3 years. And when I first moved to Harwich, I put my application in for voter information and cultural council and ended up getting appointed to both. And because I was on voter information and the cultural council, there are 2 interviews out there in Channel 18 land that I actually was interviewed for the cultural council. And it was probably the first time, I think, I don't know, I think the chair before me might have done a couple of interviews in Channel 18 land. But I actually went, the voter information committee invited me to come because they were working with the town on how do you get more people on committees. So I went and did 2 interviews and was interviewed by Channel 18 for the purpose of recruiting. And so they're out there. They're definitely out there. We didn't do them so much this past year because of the COVID, or the past couple of years, I guess. But there are a couple of interviews, kind of face to face. And there was one where Michael McCaskill made the comment to me because it was right about the time we were getting the compact agreement. And he said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, that nobody knew who the cultural council was, but we do now. That's kind of what, just because we were that year so visible, we were really, really visible that year. Yeah. Dinah?
Well, the Saquatucket Marketplace, I think, was also a big Saquatucket Harbor. The Seaside Marketplace, I think, has been a huge thing. And I meant to mention this earlier in the comments or announcements, but I am doing a series of interviews with the Seaside Marketplace vendors and have been given a list right off the bat of 10 people who want to be interviewed. So I have my work cut out for me. Some of them will be happy to do Zoom interviews. Some want to be back in the studio doing live interviews because they're not comfortable on Zoom. Anyway, I have all that ahead of me for the summer, but I'm wondering if there is some way in which the Cultural Council can be highlighted in that regard as well. And I'm not sure whether we consider the Cultural Council to be a player in that venue any longer. I know, you were very involved in cutting the ribbon. I came to that event. That's actually when I met you.
Yep. And we had a face-to-face conversation, as Charlie was talking about, you and I, Donna. Yep.
Exactly. So I don't know if the Cultural Council, if you consider the Cultural Council to be part of that whole effort, or if that's really more now the Cultural Center. But I think, to me, it's all part of the same effort of getting, culture into the community and having people appreciate the culture that is in the community. So I'm happy to do, interviews because I am now the chief interviewer still. So I'm happy to do those for whatever needs our council has in terms of visibility. But I'm also doing a whole bunch of
even though I'm leaving, my work with the Harwich Fund and the Cape Cod Foundation, our paths will be crossing because we're serving some of the same people. And I think it's just a question in the future now, as things open up a little bit, is getting together with people with similar interests and talking about what we're doing, because even though our budget is small, we touch a lot of the people that really are supporting our community in a cultural way. So I think the conversation, again, the tete-a-tete to me is the important thing.
Mhm.
You know, I want to also take a moment to say it's true that we're not as visible as we probably could be. However, we are very visible because, like, even the Harwich Historical Society, I think it was, they reached out to us or to me 6 months or so ago to ask me if we would write a letter. I think I shared that with everybody. I think I think at a certain part of the community, we are very visible.
Absolutely.
We're not like the Board of Selectmen. I mean, everybody knows the Board of Selectmen, so we're certainly not like the Board of Selectmen or even perhaps school committee, but even the school committee, people don't even know who are on the school committee. I mean, honestly. So I think it just depends
Yeah.
on how involved people are and what they know. But I know that I want to give credit to the Cultural Council and to those that have been before us, that we really have worked hard to get out. I mean, the Cultural Center, I mean, the whole reason we got that compact is because we were so involved in supporting the Cultural Center 3 years ago, 2018.
Right.
So
That's what
but
I'm
we can
talking
always be more visible. Yeah,
It was the beginning.
exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing I'm thinking about, like Bill Galvin or anybody from the Chronicle, you could reach out and say, can you do a profile piece on the Cultural Council? I think they're always looking for those types of stories. And the other thing I will say, and Dinah had said something that reminded me, I have noticed at town meetings that there are certain people who confuse the Cultural Council with the Cultural Center.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So when our allocation comes up, there will be a handful of people in the back that will yell no. And so I actually asked somebody, why did you vote no? Well, I'm against that cultural center and it should be a senior center.
Yes, right.
So they confuse us with the cultural center. And so there is an element maybe of education that we're different, but we're supporting them, but we're different. Yeah, because I get people all the time that ask me if they can book a room over at the Cultural Center, and I'm like, it's not me, it's actually Erica.
This has happened in every cultural situation I've been in different towns as well. People don't know the difference between the theaters in one building. They don't know, the difference between a theater company and the Cultural Council. There's a lot of just misinformation or lack of information. And so the more we can put ourselves out there, the more that can be corrected. So
Exactly. And Donna, that might be a good topic for an interview about the culture in Harwich and having the players interviewed, the different people that are involved and the different roles. That might actually be a helpful interview.
I wonder if I can suggest this. We have a logo. At the Guild of Harwich Artists, we have a logo, but we also have, I don't know what you want to call it, like a byline that goes with it. It's something like for the arts of the community or something like that. But what I'm saying is the Guild of Harwich Artists has this byline that's kind of a little more descriptive of what the logo says. And so if we had the Harwich Cultural Council, HCC, with a byline, something about grant giving versus a building that might pull us apart from.
That's a good point.
Suggestion.
That's a good point.
Yep, it's a good idea. And if somebody can take the logo and add that would be terrific. I don't know how to do it, but maybe somebody, and I think everybody knows that logo was created by a Cape Tech student.
Okay,
it was an internship. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you got your logo, and then you got that little for art and community. So that's our purpose, if you will. And so I think that would be part of your logo.
Absolutely.
It's like I was writing out serving our community through grant funded programs. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something,
Yeah.
something about grants, giving
Or
money.
grants for arts and community
Mhm.
culture.
Yeah, you could work on this, like, you could put it on the agenda for a September meeting if you wanted to, and somebody could take that logo and just build out whatever you want. Yeah. And just as a reminder, the logo was created by a Cape Tech student. It was an internship project, and we became the client for that particular student and went
Right.
through a whole process. So it was educational for the student, and we ended up getting the logo that we were wanting. So it was a really wonderful exercise. But yeah, you're welcome to take that logo and do whatever you want with it. Yep. Yep. All right, anything else? We're going to move into meeting schedule and our leadership conversation. So any other questions about the timeline for now? All righty, well, let's move into
No, I do want to say thank you so much for creating that.
So helpful.
I think it was extremely elucidating in terms of everything that needs to be done, and I think it will be a map going forward. So
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
it's essential. So thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking the question, because I think, because I was always had the two, but it made sense to put it together. So I appreciate the suggestion that you gave me. Yep. Yep. All right, so the meeting schedule for the next year, and typically in June, this is kind of where we agree. Do you want to keep the same meeting time, the same meeting date? Do you want to change anything going forward? And then once you decide on that, then you can go out and schedule your meetings. Like if you're going to go to Cultural Center, you've got a list of dates to give to Erica so that she can book a room, or you have a list of dates to give to Jamie for go-to meeting, whatever you're doing, and then it has to go onto the town website. So my question is, for those of you that will be on the council remaining after June, are you okay with the Thursdays at 4 o'clock, second Thursday of the month, September through June? Do you want to change anything about the day or the time?
No.
Good.
It works.
Okay. All right. So it will continue with the second Tuesday of the month,
Thursday.
or second Thursday. I'm sorry, mixing up my various meetings. Thursday, second Thursday of the month at 4 o'clock.
Mhm.
And then the next question is location. Because the town buildings are opening up, do you want to at least get things on the calendar with the assumption that you're going to meet in person? Now, you can always backtrack that if it doesn't happen and schedule a go-to meeting, but I would probably recommend that you stay at the Cultural Center. It's a good visibility, talking about visibility. It's
And I
good
have a
place.
key.
Yep. Oh, and Bernadette has a key.
I can get us in.
Oh, that's useful.
And I'll squeeze
We
into my
found that
studio if
helpful.
we have to.
Yeah, we actually found that helpful when Lorinda was with us, because we got locked out one time. And we
Right.
had to get Lorinda's key. So, yes.
Always good
All
to have
right.
an inside party.
So do you agree then the Cultural Center would be where you would like to meet?
Yeah.
All right. So with your permission, since I'm still technically the chair through the end of June, I'm going to reach out to Erica to see if I can get us on the schedule for the whole year. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. And then Erica gets to decide on the room, and it really just depends on her availability. Sometimes we're all in the library, sometimes we're in that music room. It just really depends on, she gets to decide.
So,
but
this has to be, of course, run by Erica first because she
Yes.
books space.
Absolutely.
But then it absolutely has to still, even if there's no go-to-meeting function, it still has to go to the town to be
Yep.
posted.
Yep,
Yes.
it does. Yes.
Okay, I have a little bit of information that I gleaned from
yes.
Jamie Goodwin about the scheduling and the likeliness of, when things were going to open up and so forth. So if I could just tell you that, I'm going to get that up.
While you're looking at that, do we have to now decide whether we're going to meet July and August or whatever, are we meeting straight through the year?
September. There's no reason, unless you feel the need to meet in July and August. There's no need to meet in July and August. Most town committees take July and August off, with the exception of school committee and the Board of Selectmen. And I think maybe a couple others might meet, but most everybody takes it off because there's really no reason. Bernadette and I'll do the special session. And other than that, there's no need to meet. So it would be September through June.
Okay, so one of the things that's been very different for us this year is that we have been recorded. And so that is really a question going forward. And I know that there was a hope last year, before the pandemic even occurred, or we even imagined it, that maybe we would begin wanting to meet in a place which would be easier to record from, in order to include more people. So this is really a question also for this moment, and I just want to raise it. So what Jamie had to say is, as far as public meetings go, we are still waiting to hear. The town wants everyone to continue to be remote until the 21st of June. If the Cultural Council would like to be recorded, they either need to book the Griffin Room or the small hearing room at the town hall through the administration. The Channel 18 studio is also available for meetings as well, and I will be scheduling that room. And then she says, I hope the town keeps some sort of virtual component, because it sure did make it easier to attend meetings. Now she's talking about all meetings, not just ours. But I think that this raises the question, and we had it before the pandemic made it a moot point where we had to meet virtually and we had to be recorded. We did have the discussion about whether it was important for us to maintain a presence at the cultural center by having our meetings there, and that we therefore were all part of the same effort, or whether we wanted to, in fact, move our meetings to a location where they would be able to be recorded, because the channel does not have the staff to be able to record everyone in their chosen location. So that's really the question that I just want to throw out for us to discuss.
It's a very good question, and I have a very strong opinion, but before I voice what it is, how does everybody else feel?
I don't really care where we meet, as long as we can meet. If it's convenient to be recorded at a particular location, then we should probably do that. That's my feeling.
Anybody else?
I like the idea of associating ourselves, despite the other confusions that you just mentioned, with the cultural center. It seems like it should be the home of. And all I can say is, with the library board, we have run into problems with recording so many times with the town anyway, that I wonder about that going forward. The last couple of meetings we've had, Ginny couldn't get the meeting started. It was overlapping the assessors meeting. I'm looking at my husband, who's the Board of Assessors chair, and he's home already, but the schedule was overlapped and glitched. So the limited experience I've had with the town and the platform the town's been using has not given me any sense that it's going to really enhance or help. And a lot of what we talked about is, like, people don't know about a thing because they don't care to know sometimes. It's true, get out there and talk to them face to face, but unless you're someone like Tina or me who came to town, opened up the town reports, saw that committee, I've always known about the Cultural Council, but that's because I had an interest.
Well, my question then is, do we have a choice to be recorded or not?
Yes, that is apparently the case. That is why I wanted to read that, because that's how I read it. If we wish,
hear what Tina has to say.
If we
Okay,
wish,
are you ready? Or I wanted everybody to weigh in.
if we wish to be recorded, we would need to move our location to a place where they already have recording equipment set up. That's the issue, because they are not going to be continuing with the GoToMeeting platform.
Well, then
So
in that case, I changed my mind, because it is sensitive issues that we do have to talk about sometimes. So to not be recorded, we would feel a lot more relaxed. And the fact that we can meet at the cultural center, support the cultural center, then, you know, that's an easy peasy thought for me.
Okay, it is a public meeting and we invite the public to come.
Right. That's
Whether they
Anybody can come.
whether they go out of their way to come or not. And if
Right.
we
Yep.
provide the announcement well ahead and there is full accessibility for people to be able to attend, then I think we have done our job in terms of opening ourselves up to public comment, scrutiny, whatever. And I think that is an important part of being a town committee. I actually feel strongly about that. And as much as there may be sensitive issues, I think those things have to be open for people to watch because that's part.
I'm not saying they're not open. Like you said, with everybody's to go. But I'm not saying the meeting shouldn't be open. I'm happy, but you know,
Well,
rarely you see somebody come in.
if I could say that the meeting has to be open. There is no, it's always a public meeting. It doesn't matter if you're at the cultural center or on video. It is a public meeting and anybody can come. When we first started meeting at the cultural center, we actually, those first 2 meetings had people coming from the cultural center. You know, the artists would come in and just sit down and observe. So it's not to say people won't come. And so, you know, that is always there. It's a public meeting. What I will say is this, I understand the whole recording and visibility, but I'm going to ask all of you for your homework tonight to go on to channel 18 YouTube and notice how many views our recorded meeting gets. I'm going to give you the last number. I just pulled it up. So we had 13 views, and I can assure you that 2 of those came from me. One of them was me because I couldn't remember what I had said for something that I needed to follow up on. And then my husband looked at it because I was asking him something about the platform. So that's 2. So that means 9 people. So it's up to you. Are we going to get 100 people watching it? No. If you go and look at those numbers to see how many people viewed the Cultural Council compared to Board of Selectmen, I think you're going to kind of see a little difference there.
Right.
And that's not to hurt anybody's feelings, but you know, and personally, I have a very strong feeling, and knowing that I'm not going to be here after June, I have a very, very strong feeling. I love a meeting at the Cultural Center. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I love being there. I like that the artist, I mean, Erica always puts, particularly when they're at the Cultural Center, she puts a blurb in the newsletter, so it's advertised. You know, people, we can like personally invite people. You can put flyers under studio doors if you want to. There's a lot you can do to increase your attendance. But my personal feeling is when I first started at the council, we met over at Brooks Library. It was a very nice room, but nobody could find us. We were in the basement and nobody knew where we were meeting. And then we moved over to the community center thinking we would be a bit more visible. And, you know, but there's a lot going on at the community center. When we moved to the cultural center, we got a lot of thank yous from people because, you know, people popped by and said hello, and it was really nice. So that's just me. I'm not going to be part of all of you after June 30th, but I really like meeting at the cultural center. That's just my very strong opinion. I just
Shall we take a vote? Shall we move on?
Yes. Would you like?
Okay.
Yeah. So let's take a vote. So what is your motion, Dinah?
Make a motion that we request rooms at the cultural center through Erica, and that Tina will follow up with that, and that we plan to meet at the cultural center for the coming year, assuming that we don't have a fallback with the pandemic.
Yeah. Okay. Second.
Second.
Okay. All right. Chris, we'll take the second from Chris. Any discussion? All right. Let's take a vote. Sharon.
Aye.
Thank you. Dinah.
Aye.
Charlie. Okay.
Aye. Sorry.
Bernadette.
Aye.
Bernadette. Thank you, Chris.
Aye.
And I'm a very strong aye. So that's unanimous. So I will reach out then with those dates with Erica and work with her on getting those on the calendar. Which moves us into our last item, which is the leadership. At our last meeting, Sharon threw her hand up, and we very happily accepted that she will be the grants coordinator. Sharon, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Dinah agreed to remain as secretary. Dinah, thank you. Chris, of course, is our treasurer, which I thank you so very much, which left us with the chair spot.
The cheese stands alone. Yeah,
Yes.
I texted Tina, and I will say it's because of the work that Dinah has done documenting minutes, because Chris stepped up and said she would take on treasury, which I could never deal with, and because I was toying with grants, but knowing Sharon did that, I volunteered to come in as chair. It'll be a real good lesson in humility, and I'm keeping Tina tied to me for a while to mentor me through. You know, I feel, and I'm sure that Sharon feels this way, and Peter, and maybe even the rest of you, I don't know how long the rest of your tenure had been, but we've only just come on the council, and we came on during the weirdest year. So I don't really feel like I have a handle on everything, but I have been chair of the library board in the past. I have worked on other boards, and I just said, I'll try it. You know, I've got to run the meetings and be the liaison. And when I saw that timeline, again, thank you for that too. That helped a lot. So I'm happy to, if there are no objections, and I don't think there will be, I'll step up and attempt to fill the shoes that Tina's leaving, but we're going to make her keep a foot in one shoe for a little while.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we need
Thank you
to
so
vote
much.
on that?
Yes, we do have to vote. Yes.
All right,
Yes, we do.
I move that Bernadette be installed as our chair for the following year, the coming year.
And a second?
A second.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. And any discussion? The only comment I'm going to make, Bernadette, thank you, thank you, thank you. And as I had said to Bernadette, the first year that I took on, I was kind of arm twisted into becoming the chair, and I hadn't even completed my first year at that point, but I was pretty glued to the previous chair for my first year. So I'm absolutely prepared. Whatever I can do to support the council, I'll work very closely with Bernadette to make sure, you know, she doesn't get lost somewhere. So we're going to work very closely together, and I will be there to support you. So
But you also functioned as the grants coordinator and the treasurer, and I thanks to
She's
Sharon.
gonna be glued to me. You're gonna have to share her because I need her.
Piece
You
of
thank,
cake.
I know, but everyone should thank Chris and Sharon and Dinah, because if
Yeah.
you guys didn't do what you were doing, I wouldn't have felt at all capable of doing it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Who is it who made the second? I'm sorry, I missed who was the
Couldn't be
Chris.
Chris.
Chris? Okay,
Chris, yeah.
so we just need to
And-
vote.
And now, before we take the vote, now that you see the timeline, you all know what I was doing for 2 full years. Thank goodness it's been delegated.
Yeah.
That's been a big help.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to take a vote on the motion to accept Bernadette as the new chair beginning July 1. Sharon.
Aye.
Thank you, Dinah.
Aye.
Thank you, Charlie.
Aye.
All right, Chris.
Aye.
Bernadette.
Aye.
And I'm a big aye. So thank you very much. Bernadette will be the new chair effective July 1st.
First.
And I'm also happy to announce, if those of you haven't seen this yet, the new council liaison is Mary Anderson.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
Mary will be,
Good.
yes. Mary Anderson has been assigned to the Cultural Council. So if there's anything from the town perspective, she's your contact.
Mary and I go way back, so.
Yep. I
that's-
was very happy, very, very happy when I saw that.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
All right. Any other business before we move to adjournment?
Yes,
Oh, Dinah, go ahead.
I would like to, I wish I had a citation or something from the Board of Selectmen to thank you, Tina, but I really want to applaud all of your efforts. You've done an amazing job with this council. I'm very, very impressed and grateful at all the work you put in. You clearly moved everything up several notches from where it was when you started. And your ongoing commitment is very touching as well. So I just wanted to be sure to put that on the record. I really, really appreciate all your work.
Thank you, Dinah. That means a lot. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And I'd just like to thank Charlie for his work on the committee too.
Well, thank you. And I have to say that, you know, Tina, you did all the work. I was happy to follow in your footsteps. And I actually did create some timelines and, you know, have all these great files that I think I'm going to send over to Sharon. But, you know, it's been a pleasure working with everyone. It's given me some tremendous insight into what's going on in town. And that's going to be very useful as I move into some other areas. So thank you. And I'm sure our paths will cross.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And Charlie.
Charlie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
Charlie,
Tina.
thank you. Because you really did take what I handed you and made it your own. And I really do appreciate your work this year.
That was
Thank
great.
you. Yep.
And hopefully everybody's all set in that regard. You know, I didn't get many responses myself, but I think, Tina, you got most of the responses.
Yeah, I think that people are, and that's another comment. Bernadette, now that you're officially going to be the chair, I will certainly be in touch with you. We'll sit down and do a bit of a training and figure out how we want to do that. The other thing I'm going to mention is I did set up a kind of a generic Harwich Cultural Council Gmail address, of which I went in and changed and took my name off just a couple of nights ago in anticipation. And so I will be turning that email over to Bernadette. And then that way somebody is monitoring, and it's easy because it's out there. It's on a lot of things. It makes a lot of sense to just keep the same email address. And I would recommend keeping it for a long time.
And Tina, I had set up an email address for the administrative part of it, which I'll send all the info over to Sharon.
That would be great. And that'll give Sharon, that'll give you a good history of what Charlie did this year. So that would be fantastic.
I will also plan to do these minutes in a timely fashion, not wait until September, when they actually have to be posted, right? Is that right?
Yep.
So I think it would be helpful to everybody because it's been an action-packed meeting and very full of detail. And I think it'd be helpful for everyone to have a chance to look at it and make corrections if they want to before I set it in stone. So I will.
That sounds good. Thank you, Donna.
Yeah.
That would be terrific.
Great.
All right. Anything else?
Just thank you, Tina.
Thank you,
Thanks all
thank
of
you.
Thank you, Tina.
Well, thank
And
all
happy
of you.
summer.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
we're
want
not going too far.
No, I'm not. I'll still be around. I'll still be around, and very happily. And I just want to thank everybody really for stepping up and just stepping up and taking a piece of the pie. And I think that was really important. And it's exciting to go forward as a team versus somebody running solo. So I think that's real important. And that was probably something we all, and especially me, learned in the last 2 years, how important a team is. And it really should never fall on one person. So that was a big lesson. And I just thank you all for taking a piece of the pie. So thank you.
Well, it was delicious.
With whipped cream on top. Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Chris.
I'll second it.
Charlie has seconded. All right. Motion to adjourn. Sharon.
Aye.
Thank you. Dinah.
Aye.
Thank you, Charlie.
Aye.
Bernadette.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So the meeting has been adjourned at 5:41. Thank you all. I will be in touch with everyone individually with your
Bye, Charlie.
parts. And Charlie, I will be in touch with you as well. Just
See you around.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording. Have a good night.
You too.
Good night.